Okay, so let's start here. This episode is for anyone who's ever been told that it's all in your head while your body was literally falling apart on you. For the ones who pushed through the joint pain, inflammation, and unexplained symptoms, all while being told to, quote unquote, tough it out. You weren't being dramatic, you were simply being dismissed. After 20 years of surgeries, misdiagnoses, emergency bathroom runs, and getting gaslit by people in white coats, I'm finally in what they call Crohn's and colitis remission. And now I think it's time to tell my story. You know, the real one, the one that you don't really see in the pamphlets. My name is Sunny Dee, RNBSN, and 20-year spoonie. And baby, this is spoon space. Long before anybody had said Crohn's, my body was already sending signals, really, really loud ones, that nobody around me could hear. I was just a kid, maybe 6 or 7, and my joints, specifically my femur bone, felt like it hurt all the time. Not soreness from running around or gymnastics. This was like sharp, deep, and unfair. It just didn't make any sense. I'd wake up stiff, I'd go to bed aching, and my legs definitely felt like they belonged to someone much, much older. I'll never forget the 2 times my stomach completely betrayed me. Once at 7 and the really bad one at 12. Pain so intense that I couldn't speak, I couldn't eat, I couldn't move. I mean, it eventually passed, but that core feeling never really left me. And what made it harder? I was a performing arts kid, dancing, acting, rehearsing lines after school, and pushing through exhaustion like it was just part of the job. I learned pretty early on how to smile when my body screamed, and you learn very quickly that the show must go on, even when you probably shouldn't. I didn't really have the words for what I was feeling, and when no one else seemed to notice or understand, I kind of started pretending that I was okay. And that's what you do when asking for help starts to feel like a burden. You shrink your pain into something a little more palatable. You mask, you minimize, and then you move on. But now that I kind of look back and review my life, I definitely see a child that was trying so hard to be normal in a body that was anything but. And if that's you and you're nodding your head right now, baby, I see you. I've been you. And this is where my story starts. I started high school like most kids, nervous, curious, trying to adjust. But my first year was definite chaos. I had just transferred from private school to a public arts high school, and after 9 years of uniforms and structure and tight rules, I was suddenly navigating packed hallways, classes that pushed me academically and creatively, and a big culture shock all at once. Stress? Yeah, my whole system felt it. And by the end of that first semester, I had lost nearly 50 pounds. I couldn't keep any food down. I was throwing up. I was in pain, exhausted, and shrinking fast. But not just physically, also emotionally. And still, people looked at me like I was fine. I remember thinking to myself, is this just me? Am I imagining this? But my mom, a brilliant nurse with intuition like a sixth sense, she knew something was deeply wrong. She started doing research that the doctors simply weren't. She didn't wait for someone to give us permission to advocate. She became the advocate. And eventually, we landed in a specialist's office. I'll never forget my first colonoscopy. I was 15, the room was cold. I was nervous, but of course, still trying to be funny. It's just who I am. And my doctor must have told the anesthesiologist that I loved music because right before she gave me the meds, she leaned in and said to me, "Okay, your word to remember is xylophone." Next thing I knew, basically I blinked, woke up and said, "I remember the word. It's xylophone." Groggy and woozy, but still goofy and all. Just because I had a little propofol, that did not change anything. But then came the real news. Lesions, inflammation, damage all throughout my colon, and that final confirmation nobody really wants to hear. You have Crohn's disease, a lifelong, invisible illness. No cure, just management, medication, monitoring, adapting. And I think I had just turned 15. Somehow I felt relief and grief because finally someone believed me, but now I had to believe me too. Now, of course, I don't remember everything that happened after my first colonoscopy because trauma has a funny way of blurring the details, but I do remember that everything changed. I was admitted to the hospital not long after. My body needed a full reset. I was severely dehydrated, in pain, and probably dealing with an infection or inflammation that had gotten way out of hand. They ran labs, they took more blood, and sent it off to Prometheus Labs, which was one of the only places back then that was doing advanced testing for Crohn's. The results came back 99.9% positive. Crohn's disease, not suspected, not maybe, but confirmed, chronic, and incurable. The official call came from the specialist, a gentle, compassionate doctor who looked at me and my parents in the eyes and explained what life was about to look like. I was sitting in that hospital bed, 15 years old, hearing words like lifelong management and inflammation and autoimmune. I remember nodding, but I don't think I really grasped it, not fully. Because, I mean, how could I? Crohn's doesn't really show up all at once. It unfolds very quietly, very slowly, and painfully. And at that age, I just didn't know how bad it could get. I didn't know I'd have multiple surgeries or that some days I'd have to decide between eating and being in pain. I didn't quite understand that fatigue down to the cells was a real thing, and I hadn't felt that yet. But I was beginning to understand that my life was definitely going to be different and that my body was going to be different now. You know, there's this weird kind of relief that comes with a diagnosis. It's like, nah, see, I wasn't making this up. But right behind that relief, girl, is grief and confusion and fear and a teensy bit of why me, you know? After my diagnosis, there was a stretch of time where everything felt kind of foggy, like my body was weak, my appetite was gone, and I couldn't keep food down without bracing for pain. I was in and out of appointments, trying new medications, and really wondering how the hell was I supposed to live a normal life now? I didn't research my symptoms. I was too young, too tired, way too overwhelmed. But my Mama Bear was on it, okay? She printed articles, joined forums, looked up specialists, and asked the hard questions. Because back in 2006, Crohn's wasn't a household name. Nobody was really talking about it, especially not when it came to young Black kids, and definitely not in the way that we needed. She saw that I couldn't eat, that I was going to need a village and a strategy if I was going to make it through this thing intact. And even with all that support, that truth hit hard. Y'all, this is chronic. This is not going away. And no matter how strong I was, my body now had limits. And there was definite mourning in that. Mourning the life that I thought I'd have, the career and dance that I dreamed about, even the version of myself that didn't have to think about bathrooms or infusions or emergencies. Kids my age were getting their learner's permit while I was battling and navigating hospital and doctor's appointments. But even in that heaviness, something inside me whispered, baby girl, you still have a story. It's just going to be a little bit different. This diagnosis didn't hit all at once. It was a slow sinking thing. But that hospital stay, that's when things got pretty real. After my first colonoscopy, they found inflammation throughout my colon and lesions that told a very clear story. Then, of course, the blood work came back that had confirmed, no guessing, no just maybes, this is Crohn's, baby. I was about 15. I was tired. I was dehydrated. I was hooked up to fluids, tubes, and just trying to process a lifetime sentence while everyone around me was learning how to drive. The hospital room was cold, but my parents were so warm. My mom sat at my side like a soldier, and my dad asked questions like he was building a battle plan. And me, I was pretty quiet, trying to stay calm, trying to be good, trying to be the kind of patient that everybody claps for. But underneath that silence was fear and grief and the kind of anger that you can't name when you're that young. I just didn't understand everything back then, especially that Crohn's is progressive and that the pain would evolve. and that my body would test me in different ways. But I did understand this. I wasn't making this up. It wasn't just stress. And now I had a name. And a name meant that I could fight. Now, of course, I don't remember every single reaction I got after the diagnosis. There were probably a few awes and a head tilt, maybe a "you're so strong" comment from people who literally could not name a single organ in the digestive system. But I will never forget what my parents said. We were back home. I was in my room, still kind of foggy from the hospital stay, but they stood in the doorway, not coddling, not sugarcoating, but just being real. My mom looked me dead in the eye, and my dad nodded behind her as she said, "We care about you, and we will do everything to help you stay well. But the world, baby girl, the world won't care like we do. You are still expected to show up, to smile, to perform. You might get grace here and there, but most people won't understand, and they won't care." Now listen, that might sound so harsh to some, but to me, that was a gift. That was the moment that I understood that if I wanted to live a full life with this disease, baby, I had to lead it. If doors didn't open, I had to kick them down. I could not wait on sympathy. I couldn't wait to be believed. I had to believe in myself, care for myself, fight for myself. It wasn't about pretending that everything was okay. It was about building a life that made space for what was not and doing it anyway. So by this point, I had the diagnosis, I had the meds, and I had a name for what was happening inside of me. But what I didn't have was trust. Not trust in the system, not in the process, and not in the people who were supposed to help me manage this. And I was in nursing school when it happened, trying to keep up, trying to push through, and I was constantly in the bathroom, barely eating, feeling like my body was running on fumes and pure willpower. So I went begrudgingly to my GI's office, not for a full visit, but just to ask if he'd put in an order for labs. I wasn't trying to be dramatic and I wasn't even trying to be seen. I just knew that something was off. My body was yelling and screaming it at me. So I waited 1 hour, 2 hour. The staff treated me like I was just simply overreacting, like I had watched a documentary and convinced myself that I had these symptoms, as if learning about disease in class was making me imagine it in real life. Finally, they agreed to run some basic blood work. And would you know, my potassium was at a dangerously low level. I needed supplements started literally that night. And that moment confirmed two things for me. One, is that I will always have to be the one speaking up, especially as a young Black woman in healthcare. And two, you cannot afford to second guess your intuition when your body is the one paying the price. That's the day that I learned the difference between being a patient and being my own best advocate. Listen, self-advocacy is empowering until you're too damn tired to fucking do it. And chronic illness doesn't just wear your body down, it chips away at your energy, your memory, your ability to show up clear and composed in a room full of white coats. And I always tell people, if you can, please get a health proxy. Not necessarily a legal one, but just someone who can speak up for you when you can't. And for me, that was my mom. She was sharp, observant, and definitely had the background in the medical training. But more than that, she believed me. And she made sure that everybody else did too. If you don't have somebody like that in your life, that's okay. You're not alone, but you will need a system that supports you. Here's what I suggest. One thing you can do is voice record everything. You don't need to sound polished. If you're groggy, whisper it. Just get the symptom out, capture the moment, and document your body's story. You can bring notes to every appointment. It's okay if it's a sticky note shoved in your purse or even if it's a screenshot in your phone. Practice your script as well. I'm concerned about XYZ, or I've noticed XYZ and I need help managing XYZ. Be simple, be clear, and be direct. And baby, repeat until they hear you. Because here's the truth that nobody tells you. You can be the most educated, well-spoken person in the room and still get dismissed if your pain doesn't fit into the textbook. So you've got to come prepared to repeat yourself, prepared to push back, prepared to leave and find someone else if you need to. You are not being difficult. You are not being dramatic, but you are being heard. even if you have to echo it through 3 clinics to get there. Because at the end of the day, nobody knows your body like you do. And the more that you honor that truth, the closer you get to the care that you deserve. Now, if you've made it this far, you are the real MPV, baby. You sat with the pain, you've walked through the memories, you held space for my story while navigating your own. And to me, that's pretty sacred. So whether you're newly diagnosed or 20 years deep, whether you've got a name for what you're feeling, or you're still kind of piecing it together, just know you are not making it up, you're not overreacting, and you're not alone. You are a whole warrior, baby, with receipts. And every time you speak up for your body, you are doing the revolutionary work of healing in public. So take a deep breath, mamas. Take a beat. And don't forget to save a scoop for yourself. My name is Sunny Dee, RNBSN, 20-year spoonie girl. And thank you for tuning in to Spoon Space.